up, y'all? Thanks so much for clicking on the video. My name is Leah, and let's get into a little chitty chat, okay? So in this video, we're going to be talking about Kenya Moore's interview with Carlos King. He did a same interview with Nene Leakes, and meaning that it will be broken into two parts the same way as Nene's was broken into two parts. And I got the same feeling. Like, it's just nice. It's nice to see these women like have a conversation. And yeah, it's shady. Yeah, some things I don't think is true. Some things I do think are true. But they seem comfortable. They seem relaxed. And there's great banter between Carlos and Kenya the same way it was with Carlos and Nene. So I enjoyed the conversation. And they dropped some tea that I want to talk about it. So let's get into it. All right, y'all. So the interview opens up, and we open it up similar to the way they opened up with Nene. You got Carlos and Kenya giving each other love, and they sit down. And the back, I guess they're at the same studio that he did with Nene. It's just the backdrop is different. Nene's was like orange and purple. This one is purple and green. And so they're talking, and they're just talking to each other, like, congratulating each other, asking each other how they are. They bring up about the in-person interviews and how, what's her name? Kenya said the same thing as Nene. Like, you were going to give me an in-person interview, not something over the computer. And the funny thing is like, I think the only other housewife that has, the only housewife off of Atlanta that has done the interview, I think, online has been like Sheree. I feel like that's the only person. I haven't seen Cynthia or Portia. We know Candy ain't doing it, but I haven't seen anybody else from Atlanta do it online. So, sorry, y'all. My mind went blank. So they sit down and they start getting into Kenya's backstory. They start talking about, her story with her mom. And we just find out that her mom is just a horrible human being. Her mom is a diabolical, horrible human being. So Kenya talks about how she tells the story about how when she was 16, her and her cousin were in the mom's room, and Kenya probably wasn't supposed to be in there. Because we end up finding out that the mom just blatantly ignored Kenya like she didn't exist and would get angry when the girl was like in the vicinity. So Kenya pretty much was like, I was in the room, I had recorded like my feelings, and I was like, we don't have to have like a mother-daughter relationship, but could we at least be friends? Can you talk to me? So I guess she stopped talking to the girl for like just ignored her basically. So Kenya was in the mom's room. The mom, I guess, came home early, and the cousin was like, oh crap. And so they tried to hide in the closet by throwing a bunch of clothes on Kenya, and the mom got pissed and freaked out, went downstairs, started arguing with the grandmother. And Kenya was like, she started crying, her cousin started crying, and she said that was like the first time she saw her grandmother stick up for her, because the grandmother was like, this is your child, like, you can't keep ignoring her, like, you can't keep like you could at least speak to her. And then the mom basically said she never gave birth to a child, like that is not her child. And Kenya was just heartbroken. And I think at 16, it kind of like, I guess, stuck to her that she would probably never have the relationship she craves with her mom, which is sad. And like, it's just messed up. So Kenya goes on to talk about how she wanted to study psychology because she wanted to understand why her mother was treating her this way. We find out that her mom had Kenya and her parents, her parents basically were teen parents. I guess they were like 16 or 15 when they both had Kenya. And what's crazy is a lot of people thought the reason the mom was treating Kenya that way because they thought maybe Kenya was a product of like assault. But what it sounds like is just like the mom probably had a severe mental disorder. Because you can't tell me, because there's no reason why you should treat a child that way. There's something in your brain that is, like, the chemicals in your brain are jacked. Like, they are broken and they're messed up. Because she's a child that didn't ask to be here and didn't do anything to you to be treated with such disgust and disdain. So Kenya was like, yeah, I just wanted to know why she treated me that way. We end up finding out that I think her grandmother adopted her at the age of like 3 or 4. And so that was like her main paternal parent. And she talks about how, yeah, she talks about how, she always, I knew I was pretty. My grandmother would tell me I was pretty, but she always told me how smart I was. And Kenya was like, I'm not the smartest person, but I'm definitely not the dumbest, and I did very well in my academic career. And she was like, that's why I love smart pretty girls. And then Carlos said, low key, that's why the girls can't take it, because one, you're pretty and you smart. Like how? So Kenya goes on to talk about how her mom pretty much told her, like, I'm going to destroy you. And Carlos eyes got so big when she said that. And Carlos said, what? And Kenya's like, yeah, my mom pretty much like told me I will destroy you. And Carlos was like, why would she say that? And Kenya was like, I don't really know, but that's what she told me. And then she starts telling this story about how she was 16 years old. It was like, I think her second pageant she had ever done, because she started doing pageants, I think, when she was like 13 or 14. And in the pageant that she was 16, she won. But in that pageant, you didn't have to reveal how old you were. At the time, she said she was dating a predator, which he's a predator, because she was 16. I think she said the dude was like in his late 20s, like 27, like predator. And but Kenya was like, a lot of people thought she was older than what she was, because she had like a statuesque figure and very tall and things of that nature. But she pretty much was like, I won. And my mom went to the people that run the pageant and told them that I was a drug addict, an alcoholic. He was like, Kenya said, that's one of the reasons I don't really drink that way. She was like, I've never been drunk. You might see me get tipsy, but it's rare if I drink 2 drinks. But I do not get drunk like that. So she was like, she was like, my mom said I was an alcoholic, a drug addict, and that I was dating that man, and I'm not a good representation of the pageant. And she was trying to get her crown snatched away from her. And if you don't know, like, pageants are strict. They are very strict. Like, the women who win like Miss America and Miss USA can't do nothing wrong. They cannot do anything wrong. Nothing wrong. Because they will snatch that title in a heartbeat. So to hear Kenya be like, yeah, like she pretty much was trying to get my title taken away. So Kenya had to have like a trial. Like both of her grandmothers came and advocated on her behalf and spoke about like how much of like a model citizen she was in order for her to keep her title. And so to think that like you worked this hard, You've done all these things to get this title, to win this pageant, and then to have a parent go behind your back and spread vile rumors about you to get your crown taken away for no reason other than they just don't like you for existing would mess me up. It would mess me up. So she also talks about that scene where I think it was like season 5, or not 5, like season 7 or 6, where I think it was 7, or was it 8? I don't remember. Whatever season where Kenya went and knocked on the door to talk to her mom, and the mom didn't come. And Kenya was saying, at the time, everybody like really loved Aunt Lori. But after that, when Aunt Lori basically said that like, she doesn't have to have a relationship with you, she should just leave it alone, people started to feel some type of way about Aunt Lori. And I can attest to that. Because even though I was young when that season came out, I do remember how gross I thought it was that Aunt Lori was like, well, she doesn't have to have a relationship with you. Yeah, I get that's your sister, but this is your sister's child and you're the adult in this situation. Just like King is an adult, but like you trump her. You're an elder. You know right from wrong, and you know the way in which your sister is treating this girl for no reason. for no reason is wrong. And I was like, and that's when those rumors came out about maybe like something bad happened of the way Kenya was conceived was in a bad way, but it doesn't sound like it. It sounds like this lady has like a severe mental disorder, and just because she has a mental disorder does not mean she's not a crappy person, like a horrible human being. Because there's plenty of people, especially like on TikTok, that advocate. Like, I've learned so much about certain illnesses like bipolar, borderline personality disorder, autism. I've learned so much, and it's like there are good people who have these types of disorders that are out here explaining and trying to destigmatize it. So when I'm saying this lady is a trash human being, I'm not saying because of her illness she's a trash human being. I'm saying as a person, she is horrible for what she did to her child. Because Kenya is a child. Kenya was her child and still is her child. And there was no reason for her to treat her that way. No reason to treat her that way. And while King is telling this story, Carlos is just shook. But he also commends her for her vulnerability, because he was like, this is the Kenya I know. This is the Kenya I fell in love with. And he was like, I wish that they would show this side of you more, because this is the Kenya that is just wonderful to be around. So next thing you know, they get on the topic of conversation. I think it was like colorism. And Kenya pretty much says colorism does exist. Because she was like, certain things that I can do, I would be nailed to the cross for. But certain things other housewives are able to do, they're fine. And I feel in that regard, especially when it comes to Kenya, it's more so, I feel like it's racism and colorism. Because there's certain things that Kenya has done where I'm like, yeah, Kenya, you was doing too much. But the way in which fans react to it, that venom and vitriol is like solid hatred. And it's like, you don't know her like that for you to feel this like physically angry with her. Like, I have seen some of the nastiest videos about all of these ladies on Real Housewives, any Real Housewives show, more specifically like the Black Real Housewives, where people go in and it's like, damn. It's like y'all act like the lady stole your firstborn child and offered it up for a sacrifice. Like, the venom that be coming out of y'all is wild. So then they start talking about season 5 and how Kenya became a part of the cast for season 5 of Real Housewives of Atlanta. And she ends up telling Carlos, because Carlos was like, well, how did you get here? Because Carlos like, well, I wasn't producing season 5. Like, I wasn't there for season 5, but I did watch. And when you were on season 5, I was getting phone calls left and right. And because I told you about, girl, they got Kenya on here. She twirling, she doing this and she doing that. And then Carlos also talks about how, like, everybody was wanting to know what was Kenya gonna give, pretty much. But she gave a lot. And they was like, it was a lot going on. So Kenya at first was like, what? Because Carlos was like, what made you want to like come down to Atlanta? And Kenya said, it was kind of like Groundhog's Day. I was like in a rut. I was auditioning, booking some of my auditions, filming or doing things just enough to keep the lights on, but I wasn't really like living, pretty much. She was like, I had my production company. I had my first house when I was 26. It was just like, it was monotonous. Pretty much. It was monotonous. And I was just ready for something new. She said she had just gotten out of like a series, like 2 serious relationships. One was with an agent, and the other one, I think she said an athlete. Somebody, or some entertainer or something like that. And so she talks about how I heard, because she was like, my only way of knowing what Atlanta was through Miss Lawrence. She was like, I didn't watch Atlanta. I watched it from time to time, but I didn't watch it like that. Like, it wasn't my cup of tea. She said, the only person I really didn't like when I first was watching Atlanta was Nene. I just thought she was brash and like, she just did the most. But then when I came and got to know her, I realized, like, you can't really judge someone based off of TV, because when she was a friend, she was a friend, and when she was an enemy, she was an enemy. So Kenya was like, Miss Lawrence pretty much was like, you should go out for it. So Kenya pretty much told us she was auditioning. So for season 5, Kenya filmed for a whole entire month without pay, y'all, without pay, for Real Housewives of Atlanta. And then she starts giving us the tea, her and Carlos, where they were like being a part of Real Housewives of Atlanta was like an exclusive club back in the day. Like you had to audition, and Kenya pretty much breaks it down, and it was like they would shoot you with your family by yourself. They would shoot you like at work or with your businesses. They would film you like with like a friend. And she was like, and sometimes you might get one housewife. And she was like, my only connection to the housewives was Lawrence. And she was like, Lawrence would be like if they liked you, then you might get a chance to film with a housewife. And like a scene would be like, oh, I'm going to Phaedra's party, would you like to come? And Kenya's like, at the time I didn't know who Phaedra was, but I'm like, oh, okay, cool, I'm going, I'm gonna go see what it is. But to find out that she didn't have a peach, like she did not have a peach filming for season 5 is crazy. She then lets us know that the ladies did go on strike during season 5. Like when you remember when Kim like left, that's when she was feeling herself because she got Roy, that she didn't need the show anymore. And the women after Kim like walked off like from the show, the women were just like, yeah, Kim gets special treatment, and they didn't like it. So the ladies stopped filming for a whole entire week. So they were auditioning Portia. Like Portia wasn't, I think Kenya was like, Portia wasn't like even in the running to become a part of the cast. Like the cast was closed. And because Kim walked off set and they stopped filming for that whole week, they opened the casting back up. And that's when we got that iconic fight at the Hosea Williams Charity Foundation with Kenya and Portia on the curb arguing back and forth. And so what's crazy is neither one of them at the time had a peach. They didn't have a peach. So we basically watched two women who weren't even considered housewives film a scene together by themselves, which is wild. So Kenya ends up becoming an official housewife at Nene's Women of Success event. And Carlos is like, that's the event where that meme came from, where Nene is like looking around the party like, who are all these people? Because I guess she really didn't know who those women were at her Women of Success event. Because Kenya lets us know that everyone that was at that event, majority of the women there were auditioning for a role on Real Housewives of Atlanta. And like we said, it was a rigorous like auditioning process to be a part of the cast. So Kenya pretty much told them, like, she was like, look, she filmed for like a straight month without getting paid. And she pretty much told them, like, this is enough. I'm not going to keep working for free. Production begged her to come back and film a scene at that actual event. And Kenya was like, if I'm not a housewife after this event, you can't use any of the film that you used to film me, as well as like she was like, I'm done, like I'm not coming back. And so after that event, they pretty much made her an official housewife. Kenya also talks about how she was in such a horrible place after season 5 aired. It's like probably was like a shock to her system. Like, you're used to everyone loving on you because of you being Miss USA 1993. But her being the second black, dark-skinned beauty pageant holder. And it's like the way they edit things and the way things come across, like not everyone found her likable or palatable. And she was just like, it was really bad. Like, she didn't want to talk. She turned off her phone. She didn't talk to nobody for a whole entire week. She said the part that really got her, because she even thought the fun shade with, like white refrigerator, when Nene went and met with Kenya in the ghetto. And Kenya was like, that was funny to me. Like, I ate that L. That was nothing to me. But I guess what really tore her down was the scene of her at Cynthia's beauty pageant. Not beauty pageant, her tryouts for the modeling agency, and Kenya was like, they made it seem like I was tearing down like a young black girl. And she was like, I have a soft spot for young black girls because that's who I was in Detroit. A young black girl just trying to make it out of the hood, make sure I don't get assaulted or beat up or get pregnant. And them to show that, it just hurt. And then she was like, to find out that people were calling me an alcoholic, i.e. Phaedra, and saying that I have like mental issues because of my mother. And Kenya pretty much says like, that's why I always feel the way I feel about Phaedra, because I confided in Phaedra about what my mom did to me, about calling me an alcoholic when I was 16 years old, about me thinking that she possibly had a mental illness. And it's like, you used my trauma to hit me. And it's like, girl, it was never even that deep between us. So I leave Phaedra where she's at, which is understandable. Like I said, they said that Kenya and Portia revived the show because the show was in a bad place. It's still crazy that if those chains of events hadn't happened where the ladies stopped filming, were like pretty much on strike because they felt like Kim was getting like better treatment than them, and then you got Kenya and Portia, like they had to open up the casting because then Kim left the show. It's crazy. That's just crazy to me that like, had Kim not left the show or had the ladies not went on strike, we would have never known who Portia Williams was or is. That's just wild to me. That's wild. So then he asked the same question, who do you think was your greatest challenger? And Kenya said Nene. She was like, Nene is the yin to my yang. Like, when we were good, and we made great TV when we were friends, and when we weren't friends and we were just enemies, we still made great TV. And he was like, do you miss Nene on the show? And Kenya said, yeah, I do miss her on the show. And then Carlos asked her, like, do you believe that Nene built like Real Housewives? And Kenya says she built it, but it got foreclosed on, which is true. Nene, you can't take that away from her, but the ship has sailed and it's time to move on. They then begin to speak about how Kenya feels like she hasn't been given her flowers, and even Carlos says the same sentiments, where he feels as though the network like undervalues her, and she even felt like the contributions that she has given the network have been undervalued, because she then starts to speak about the reunion and how she wasn't happy about her seating for season 14. She spoke to the producers, and she basically told them, you would have never moved Nene's seat, and says she's always had great stories, but this season 15, not so much. And they pretty much revealed that the seating arrangements is pretty much based off of like seniority and star power. And she gives example of how Kyle has always sat first chair in Beverly Hills because she's the last standing OG, and she's pretty much like, when you think of Beverly Hills, you think of Kyle, you think of Kim Richards, you think of Lisa Vanderpump, Erica Jane, Lisa Rinna, and like those ladies, and even Yolanda at times. And then when you think of New Jersey, she brought up Teresa and Melissa. Like, Teresa will always have first chair in New Jersey. Then you go to Real Housewives of Potomac. Karen and Giselle have always been first chair. And Kenya even alluded to like saying that she called the producers and told them, why isn't Giselle in the intro card? Like, why isn't she front and center, like in the middle? Like, she's that girl of that franchise. And to be honest, Giselle gets on my nerves, and I really can't stand that lady. But when I think of Potomac, I think of Giselle, I think of Karen, and I think of Candace. And the thing about it is, Giselle has cemented herself as a face of Real Housewives of Potomac, mainly because they use her for so many things. They used her for the promo for the Haunted Mansion, and I think she's done several other promos on Bravo. So Bravo loves Giselle, so Giselle will always be first chair because she is the face of that show. And in that regard, it is unfair that they put Kenya in between Sheree and Candy during season 14, and now you have season 15. It goes Drew, Kenya, and Candy. And it's like, yeah, Candy doesn't care because she's at the end of the chair. But she was like, for me, I care because you would have never moved me. Would have, because she's been first chair several times, several seasons, and then you move her for Sheree. Sheree. And it seems like they want to make Sheree an anchor, but it's like, how can you make someone an anchor who she wasn't consistent? Like, I think Sheree's last season was season 4. Was it season 4? And then from season 4 all the way, no, season 5 all the way to season 8, we didn't have Sheree for 4 seasons. She came back for season 9. She fell off during season 9. Then seasons 10 through 13, no, through 14, seasons 10 through 14, she wasn't on the show. No, seasons 10 through 13. Seasons 10 through 13, she wasn't on the show. Then she comes back for season 14, and you make her the first chair. That's not fair to Kenya, who was consistently there. I think the only season she wasn't there was for season 9 and 10. Like, she was in and out. Like, she was like making guest appearances. And so she then talks about, like, I think they're punishing her for marrying Mark, and that off camera pretty much. And Carlos asked her that, like, do you think they're punishing you? And she was like, is that a secret? Like, yeah, they punished me. And she was like, I understood why, but I also was like, I wanted to have something for myself. She was like, on this show, like, once you bring your marriage on the reality show, it's like a kiss of death. And I didn't want that. I did not want to get a divorce. Like, I wanted it to work out. And so Carlos is like, well, did the show ruin your marriage? Or, like, who ruined, like, did being on the show ruin your marriage? And Kenya said Mark ruined the marriage. She was like, I'm a good wife, and I'll be a good wife to the next person that, like, I so choose, pretty much. So she talks about getting married to Mark, and then she explains that, like, when she got with Mark, it was after her dating Crazy Eyes, a.k.a. Big-Eyed, what's his name? Mark? Yeah, Big-Eyed Mark, the one with the crazy eyes, who was like busting out Kenya's like windows in her garage. He was crazy. And then we found out that he really was crazy because he got locked up for DV. Yeah, it was a lot going on with that man. So she was like, after that, I was just trying to get it, like, you know, I just prayed to God and told him, like, the next relationship I'm going to be in, I want to be completely healed before then. So she met, she saw him at his restaurant. She didn't know he owned the restaurant at the time, but she was really, like, feeling him. But she was just like, I don't know if I'm ready for that. So she just paid it. So then she went to counseling, went to therapy, and then she, like, called her friend Chef Roble to ask, like, hey, is your friend, like, single? And he was like, I don't know, let me check. And she said, you know, we connected and we would be on the phone for hours on hours, like for 2 hours. We really didn't see each other like that. But when we got on the phone, we talked for a long time. And then next thing you know, I got married, and she was like, I just wanted to protect it. She then goes on to say, well, Carlos ends up saying, like, you know, I'm not going to be, he's like, if I can be honest with you, I thought, like, when you posted that picture of y'all fist bumping and, like, at the wedding, that there was something missing, like there was no affection, like, and she was like, no, we took pictures, like pictures of us kissing and stuff, but I thought the fist bump picture was showing that we had like a fun, cool friendship, like it wasn't just about sex. And he was like, yeah, but it was just something off about that. And she was like, okay. And Carlos ends up calling her and telling her, Carlos said Kenya called me and told me she got married. Called me and was like, you know what? She was like, I got married, but don't tell nobody. Cause he was like, did the network know? And she was like, no. And he was like, well, I won't tell, but girl, what? So Carlos never told anybody that Kenya got married because they're just friends like that. He also talked to her about, you know, being punished by the network, and Kenya says like they could have gave me a spinoff, like as many spinoffs as they given, they could have gave me a spinoff documenting my journey of like my pregnancy. That would have been like a full circle moment. I got married, that was my storyline, getting married, having a family, and they didn't give me one. She denies having like a spinoff with Brooklyn, even though she feels like they deserve to have one. And then she ends up confirming that Mark basically, she was like, honestly, because I think he asked, like, is Mark trying to take your money? And Kenya was like, well, he wants me to pay like his lawyer fees and something else. And she was like, I would pay that to make him go away. But now what's keeping us in court is him challenging my rights to film with Brooklyn. But now all of a sudden he wants to go back and forth about it, because now he has to ask me permission about filming with Brooklyn now that he's doing a reality show. And that's trash, because he's trash. And pretty much now he's trying to, like, I guess, change it where she can't have a say so on whether or not Brooklyn can film Brooklyn can film with him, even though that was his way of getting at her. So it's like you backed yourself in a corner, and now you're taking forever and a day to figure it, like, you know, to cause issues. And then Carlos asked about the Marlo situation, about hearing that Mark was upset about Marlo kicking on the door. And Kenya was like, was he really upset? Because I don't know how upset you can be when you haven't seen your daughter physically in 2 years and 2 days. And I said, damn. But you on the internet caping like you're such this great father. Basura. So the interview, or part one, ends with Carlos asking Kenya like a question about Apollo and their relationship, and saying like, a lot of people accused you of being inappropriate with him, and what do you have to say about that? And that's where it cut off. So the things that stood out to me in this part one was, one, finding out that iconic scene that was filmed between Kenya and Portia. Neither one of them had a peach or even had a job. Finding out that Kenya worked for a whole entire month without getting paid. And also finding out how difficult or how rigorous the trial period for being a part of Real Housewives was, which I feel like they need to go back to that. Finding out that like Portia was never supposed to be a part of the cast, but because Kim left, they opened the casting and allowed Portia to be a part of it. Also finding out that Kenya was really going to walk away from Real Housewives after season 5, after receiving so much backlash and feeling as though like she was at her lowest, with everyone hurling insults and coming at her neck and things of that nature. And then also finding out that Carlos and the other producers were the ones that coerced her to get back in, like being like, girl, no, we need you, girl, we will be by your side. And she eventually conceded and was like, yeah. And I'm glad she did, because we got great moments out of it. And also finding out that the seating arrangements are based off of seniority. I feel like I've kind of always knew that, but we always operated, at least the fans I know, operated from like, first chair is for like who had the best storyline or the most storyline. But if it truly is operating off of star power and seniority, then the way that they are doing Kenya these past 2 seasons is bad. Like, Sheree is nobody's anchor. She is nobody's star. And she definitely didn't add that much to this season, that Kenya could have been sitting in first chair and Sheree could have been sitting in the middle on the other couch. Marlo could have took Sheree's spot. If we being all the way serious. But yeah, I'm excited for part 2. I really enjoyed it. It gave the same vibes as Nene, just seeing someone being relaxed in a new element. I like seeing these women in a different element, because you get to see parts of them that we normally don't see on the show. So yeah, y'all, that is it. That is all. Remember to be bravely authentic and hop down in them comments below. Deuces.